Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, was making his way through the corridors of a small hospital, greeting doctors, patients, and staff as part of his ongoing charitable initiatives. These visits were a way for him to step away from the larger-than-life persona he was often associated with and connect with everyday people on a more personal level. He had always believed in the power of optimism and inspiration, using his presence to uplift others. However, this visit was about to challenge him in a way he hadn't anticipated. As he approached the waiting area, a young girl sitting quietly on one of the chairs caught his attention. She had an air of calmness about her that seemed unusual for someone her age. Her small hands clutched a worn-out book, and her legs swung gently back and forth, just barely grazing the floor. When their eyes met, she offered a small smile, not the starstruck look he often received, but one filled with genuine curiosity. "Mr. Trump," the girl said softly as he came closer. Her voice was steady, almost commanding, despite its gentleness. "I have a question I want to ask you." Donald paused, intrigued. He adjusted his stance, bending slightly to meet her at eye level. "Of course, sweetheart," he said warmly, his smile reassuring. "Ask me anything." The room, filled with the low hum of conversation and the occasional beep of hospital equipment, seemed to quiet as if the universe itself was leaning in to hear her question. "What do you think happens when we die?" she asked, her tone sincere but serious, like someone seeking an answer to a deeply personal mystery. Donald blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Of all the questions he had fielded throughout his life, from the press, political opponents, even world leaders, this one was different. It wasn't a question of strategy or ambition. It was a question that touched on the profound and uncharted. He straightened slightly, searching her face. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with a thirst for understanding. He could tell this wasn't an idle curiosity. This was a question she had carried with her, perhaps for a long time. "That's a very big question," he said after a moment, his voice measured and calm. "A very important one." He glanced around the room briefly, as if seeking confirmation that his words would be heard and understood. Then he returned his gaze to the girl, whose expression hadn't wavered. "I think," he began, choosing his words carefully, "that we live in a world full of wonders and mysteries. Some things we understand, and some things we may never fully grasp. A lot of people believe that after we die, we go to a better place. Others think we become a part of the universe itself, like energy or stardust. But what I think really matters is how we live our lives while we're here." The girl tilted her head, her small fingers fidgeting with the edge of her book. "So, we might become stars?" she asked, her voice tinged with a mix of wonder and hope. Donald smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting as he considered her interpretation. "Maybe," he said gently, "or maybe we leave behind something even more important, a legacy. The love we give, the kindness we show, and the way we make others feel. That's what stays behind." For a moment, the girl was silent, her expression thoughtful. Then she spoke again, her voice quieter but no less earnest. "But what if there's God? What if we go to Him?" The question made Donald pause. It was a question that had been debated across centuries, cultures, and belief systems. He could sense the weight it carried for her. She wasn't just asking about theology. She was asking about meaning, about comfort, about something bigger than herself. "I think," he said slowly, "a lot of people believe in God because it gives them hope and strength. Faith in something greater than ourselves can help us get through hard times. And whether or not we have all the answers, the idea that there's something bigger out there can remind us to be humble and to treat others with compassion." The girl's brow furrowed slightly, as though she were processing his words. "But what if God isn't real?" she asked, her tone hesitant but filled with genuine curiosity. Donald leaned in a little closer, his voice softening. "You know, it's okay not to be sure. Life is a journey, and part of that journey is asking questions, learning, and discovering what feels true to you. What's most important is to live with a good heart and to be kind to others. That's what makes life meaningful, no matter what you believe." The girl stared at him, her eyes glimmering with a mix of emotions. There was a moment of stillness, a kind of quiet understanding that passed between them. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked, "What if I never know the answer? What if I'm scared?" Donald's expression softened even further. He reached out and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to know everything right now," he said, his tone filled with empathy. "The questions you're asking, those are the questions that help us grow. And it's okay to feel scared sometimes. It means you care, and that's a good thing. Just keep searching, keep wondering, and live a life you're proud of. That's already part of the answer." The girl's lips quivered slightly as she nodded, her small hands tightening around her book. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly and offered him a faint, grateful smile. In that moment, Donald felt something shift within him. It wasn't a grand revelation or a sudden change of heart. It was something quieter, something deeper. He had spent his life answering questions, but this one left him pondering the importance of not just the answers, but the journey to find them. Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, strolled down the hospital corridor, his polished shoes echoing faintly on the linoleum floor. The faint hum of monitors and the occasional murmur of conversation surrounded him, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop replaying the young girl's question over and over in his head. "What do you think happens when we die?" The question, so simple yet so profound, felt like it had embedded itself in his consciousness. As he walked, he thought about his life, the towering skyscrapers he had built, symbols of his ambition and success, the hard-fought political battles that defined his tenure in the Oval Office, and the many accolades he had accumulated over decades. Yet, amidst all the achievements, he now wondered, had he overlooked something deeper, something more essential? He paused near a large window, the afternoon sunlight streaming through and casting long shadows on the floor. What if that little girl wasn't just looking for an answer? What if she was seeking something more, a reassurance that the unknown wasn't so frightening, a comfort in the face of uncertainty, and a hope that there was something beyond this life? He recalled his own childhood in Queens, New York, a boisterous boy with a mind always buzzing with curiosity. He had been the kind of kid who peppered adults with endless questions, constantly asking why, and dreaming about conquering the world. Back then, the future seemed infinite, and answers always seemed just within reach. But now, confronted with a question about life's ultimate mystery, he felt an unfamiliar sensation, uncertainty. His response to the girl had been heartfelt, but was it enough? Did it truly address the weight of her inquiry, or had it merely skirted the surface? The more he thought about it, the more the conversation seemed to linger like a melody he couldn't shake. The girl's bright, curious eyes haunted his thoughts, nudging him to reflect on things he had long pushed aside: faith, mortality, and the meaning of it all. Was there something he had been too busy, too focused on success, to explore? In the days following his visit to the hospital, Donald found himself thinking about the girl more often than he expected. She had been just a child, yet her words carried a gravity that unsettled him. It was a fleeting moment, no more than a few minutes in the grand scheme of things, yet it felt monumental. It was as though her question had planted a seed in his mind, one that now demanded to grow. He began to dive into books about faith, philosophy, and the great mysteries of existence. At night, he would sit in his study, leafing through pages of thinkers and theologians, their words challenging him in ways he hadn't experienced before. He engaged in conversations with his closest confidants, friends, business associates, and even spiritual advisors. Each person offered a different perspective, from the deeply religious to the staunchly skeptical. Yet, for all the insights he gained, none felt entirely satisfying. The answers he encountered seemed like pieces of a larger puzzle, one he couldn't quite complete. It was frustrating and fascinating all at once, a reminder that even with all his accomplishments, there were some things that defied mastery. One evening, after an especially long day, Donald found himself on the balcony of his estate. The air was cool, the kind that hinted at the changing seasons. He leaned on the railing, staring up at the vast expanse of stars. The sky stretched endlessly, a reminder of how small and fleeting human life truly was. In the stillness, he felt a surprising sense of calm. Maybe the answers he sought weren't meant to be fully understood. Maybe the true meaning of life wasn't in the conclusions we draw, but in the questions we dare to ask. Perhaps it was the act of seeking, of striving to understand, that gave life its richness and depth. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the need to control or conquer. He simply allowed himself to wonder, to reflect, and to feel connected to something greater. The girl's question had sparked a journey he hadn't expected, a journey not to find answers, but to embrace the search itself. Weeks later, Donald Trump found himself seated at an elegant dinner party, surrounded by friends and some of the brightest minds in the world. The room was a blend of laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of intellectual discussions. Conversations swirled around the future of technology, the marvels of modern science, and the boundless potential of human innovation. These were topics that often animated the table, and Donald listened intently, occasionally chiming in with a sharp observation or an anecdote from his own experiences. As the evening wore on, the tone began to shift. The guests, relaxed by the warmth of fine wine and good company, ventured into deeper, less tangible subjects. Someone mentioned the incomprehensible vastness of the universe, and another spoke of humanity's eternal quest to understand it. Slowly, the conversation steered away from technology and progress towards something more profound: faith, existence, and the nature of the cosmos. Seated across from Donald was an elderly woman who had been quietly observing the discussion. Her silver hair framed a face marked with wisdom and kindness, and her eyes sparkled with a gentle curiosity. She leaned forward slightly, her voice warm but deliberate as she spoke. "Mr. Trump," she began, addressing him with a respectful tone that drew the attention of those around them. "You've accomplished so much in your life, built skyscrapers, led a nation, and inspired countless people. But I wonder, when you look up at the night sky, what do you think about? What do you believe in?" The question hung in the air, silencing the murmurs at the table. Donald, usually quick with a witty remark or a decisive answer, hesitated. This wasn't the kind of question he was often asked, especially not in a setting like this. He sat back slightly in his chair, his expression thoughtful. For a brief moment, the bustling energy of the room faded, leaving only the soft glow of candlelight and the weight of her inquiry. His thoughts turned, almost instinctively, to the little girl he had met in the hospital weeks earlier. He remembered her curious eyes, her earnest voice, and the profound questions she had asked him. "What do you think happens when we die? Is there a God?" Her words had stayed with him, echoing in moments of quiet reflection. And now, here was another opportunity to confront those same thoughts. "I think," Donald began slowly, his voice measured, "the universe is a magnificent place, breathtaking. Really, it's full of mysteries that we may never completely understand. No matter how much we learn or how far we go, There's always something beyond our reach. And maybe that's what makes life so fascinating." The woman nodded gently, her thoughtful gaze encouraging him to continue. "Do you ever think," she asked, "that those mysteries could be signs of something greater? Something beyond us?" Donald glanced out of the window, where the city lights stretched endlessly, mirroring the stars above. He took a deep breath before responding. "Maybe," he said, "maybe there is something greater, something bigger than all of us. I don't know for sure, and I've come to think that's okay. Maybe what really matters isn't having all the answers, but being willing to search for them. Maybe it's the journey that counts the most." A soft smile crossed the woman's face, as though his words confirmed something she had long believed. "The journey of searching," she said, her voice carrying a quiet conviction, "is everything. Sometimes, the questions themselves bring us closer to the truth than any answer ever could." Donald sat back, her words resonating deeply. He felt a rare sense of vulnerability, not the kind born of weakness, but of shared humanity. For a man who had spent his life chasing accomplishments and tangible goals, the idea of embracing uncertainty felt both foreign and freeing. In that moment, he wasn't a world leader or a tycoon. He was simply a man, a fellow traveler on the journey of life, still seeking, still learning, still wondering. As the conversation around the table resumed, Donald remained quiet, his mind turning over the woman's words. What if the questions were the point? What if the search itself was the greatest answer? For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace with not knowing, content to let the journey unfold. Months later, Donald Trump found himself walking through the familiar hallways of the small hospital. He had come to visit an old friend undergoing treatment, but as he passed the nurse's station and the rows of patient rooms, a strange and unexplainable feeling tugged at his chest. It was as though the very walls of the hospital held a memory, a whisper of a moment that had left an imprint on his soul. His mind wandered back to that day when a young girl with wide, curious eyes had stopped him with a question that had lingered ever since. Could she still be here? The thought came unbidden, but it felt urgent. The memory of her earnest voice and profound question had never quite left him. As he approached the waiting room, Donald's pace slowed. The room was bustling with activity, parents comforting children, patients flipping through outdated magazines, and nurses moving swiftly to call the next appointment. But then, his eyes caught something that made him stop in his tracks. There she was, sitting in the same spot, her legs dangling from the chair, just as they had before. Though she looked slightly older now, her thoughtful expression was unchanged, her gaze fixed on something unseen, as if lost in a world of her own. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure if she would remember him, but as if sensing his presence. The girl looked up, and her face lit up with recognition. A smile broke across her face, radiant and full of excitement. Without a second's hesitation, she jumped down from her seat and ran toward him. "Mr. Trump," she exclaimed, her voice ringing through the room. "You came back." Donald felt an uncharacteristic warmth spread through his chest. He crouched down to meet her at eye level, mirroring her joy with a smile of his own. "I couldn't stay away," he said, his voice softer than usual, carrying a sincerity that surprised even him. "I've thought a lot about our conversation." Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, the same curiosity that had stopped him in his tracks months ago. "Really?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "About what, sir?" Donald nodded, his expression growing serious but kind. "About what happens when we die," he began, "and about the questions you asked me that day. They've stayed with me and made me think deeply. I've come to realize something important." The girl's expression shifted, her youthful excitement giving way to a quiet intensity. She looked at him intently, her full attention focused on his words. "What did you realize?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Donald placed a reassuring hand on her small shoulder, his gaze warm and steady. "I realized," he said, speaking slowly, "that it's okay not to have all the answers. But what's most important is to keep searching, to keep asking questions, and to never stop wondering. That journey, the one we take to find meaning, it connects all of us, no matter who we are. Do you know what I mean?" The girl stared at him, her face thoughtful. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her lips. Her eyes, so full of wonder, now reflected a quiet understanding. She nodded, as though some invisible weight had been lifted. "I think I do," she said softly. "Maybe we don't have to know everything. Maybe just asking is enough for now." Donald felt a swell of pride and admiration for the young girl. Despite her youth, she seemed to grasp something that even many adults struggled with. "Exactly," he said, straightening up slightly but keeping his focus on her. "Sometimes, the questions are even more important than the answers. They keep us connected to each other and to something bigger than ourselves." The girl's smile grew, her face glowing with determination. "I'll keep asking questions," she said firmly. "I promise." Donald stood, his towering figure casting a shadow across the floor, but his presence felt anything but imposing. Looking down at her one last time, he nodded. "Good," he said. "That's how we find meaning. Keep searching for what feels true to you, and never stop wondering. That's how we grow." As she gave him a small wave and returned to her seat, Donald turned to leave, but as he walked away, he felt a profound sense of peace, a rare, almost unfamiliar feeling that seemed to settle in his very core. The memory of their exchange stayed with him, reminding him of something he had come to understand over the past few months. Sometimes, the deepest truths don't come from the answers we find, but from the questions we dare to ask. And in the journey of seeking, we find what truly matters. From that day forward, Donald Trump's perspective on life began to evolve in ways he hadn't anticipated. He continued pursuing his ambitions with the same energy and drive that had always defined him. But now, there was a subtle yet profound difference. A sense of humility had taken root, a recognition that the world was more intricate and mysterious than he had once allowed himself to acknowledge. He began to view life as a delicate balance, a tapestry woven from threads of science, faith, and the unexplained. It wasn't that he abandoned his belief in hard work, logic, or results. Rather, he started to see these as pieces of a larger puzzle. There were mysteries that couldn't be unraveled through intellect alone, questions that lingered not to be answered, but to inspire exploration. The young girl's question about what happens after death stayed with him, replaying in quiet moments. He found himself sharing the story more and more, whether with close friends over private dinners or during larger public events. The moment had etched itself into his memory, not because of its weighty topic, but because of the simplicity and sincerity with which it had been asked. In speeches and conversations, Donald began weaving the encounter into his message. "A little girl once asked me a question," he would say, pausing to let the gravity of the moment sink in. "She wanted to know what happens when we die. I didn't have the perfect answer then, and I still don't. But what I've come to realize is this: it's the questions we ask and the journey to find their answers that truly define us." The anecdote resonated with audiences, not because it was polished or rehearsed, but because it was genuine. It reminded people of something fundamental: our shared humanity, bound by curiosity and the desire to make sense of our existence. One crisp evening, as Donald stood on the balcony of his estate, he gazed out at the sprawling night sky. The air was still, and the stars shone with a brilliance that seemed almost otherworldly. The view, as breathtaking as it was, wasn't unfamiliar to him. He had stood in this very spot countless times before, contemplating his next move, visualizing goals, or reflecting on victories. But this time was different. As he looked at the stars, he felt something he couldn't quite explain, a connection that seemed to stretch beyond the tangible world. It wasn't just the vastness of the universe that struck him, but the realization that within its enormity, there was a shared thread that connected every person he had ever met. He thought about the people whose lives he had touched and those who had, in turn, touched his, from world leaders to construction workers, from his family to strangers he had met only briefly. The interconnectedness of their stories began to feel as infinite as the stars above. And then his thoughts drifted, inevitably, back to the little girl. Her bright eyes and unwavering curiosity seemed as vivid in his memory as the night they first met. He often wondered what had become of her. Did she still ponder the same questions? Had she found answers that brought her peace? Or was she, like everyone else, still searching? Donald realized he might never know. Their paths had crossed only briefly, yet her presence in his life had been transformative. She had reminded him that life wasn't solely about building skyscrapers or winning battles. It was about connection, about faith, about the endless pursuit of understanding. The lesson she had taught him, unintentionally, perhaps, was one he carried with him daily. Sometimes, he thought, the most profound truths aren't found in accomplishments or accolades, but in the questions we allow ourselves to ask. The greatest impact we can have isn't through what we achieve, but through how we share the journey with others. As he stood under the vast sky, Donald felt a quiet peace settle over him. The search for meaning, he understood, wasn't a solitary endeavor. It was a shared journey, one that transcended time, space, and individual lives, binding humanity together in its endless wonder. Donald Trump's journey offers a profound lesson that resonates with us all. The realization that life doesn't always provide clear answers, and that's okay. We live in a world filled with wonder, mystery, and complexity, much of which cannot be fully unraveled by human reasoning alone. Yet, it is precisely these uncertainties that make life rich, compelling, and worth living. The young girl's question, simple yet profound, serves as a reminder of our shared humanity and the universal quest for meaning. Her courage to ask and her openness to wonder highlight qualities that are often overshadowed in a world obsessed with results and achievements. She reminds us that life isn't solely about what we accomplish, but about the connections we make, the questions we dare to ask, and the truths we seek together. Take a moment to reflect on your own journey. What questions have lingered in your heart, waiting to be explored? What mysteries have you dismissed, thinking they were too big, too distant, or too unanswerable? The greatest lessons in life often come not from finding definitive answers, but from the process of searching. It is in the act of asking, seeking, and sharing that we discover what truly matters. The journey itself, the questions, the connections, the moments of wonder, holds more meaning than any final destination. Look up at the stars, feel the vastness of the universe, and know that you are part of something infinitely larger than yourself. In every question you ask, in every connection you make, you contribute to the collective journey of humanity. Keep seeking, keep questioning, keep wondering. The path you take in search of meaning is itself the greatest answer you'll ever find. As you reflect on this journey and the profound questions it raises, we encourage you to take the next step, not just in your personal search for meaning, but in helping this message reach more souls seeking connection and understanding. Think of this channel as a beacon, a light in the vast universe of digital content, guiding those who yearn for inspiration, hope, and deeper truths. By liking this video, you're not just pressing a button, you're showing that you value these conversations, that you see the importance of asking life's biggest questions. By subscribing to this channel, you're joining a community of seekers, believers, and thinkers, united in a shared journey toward understanding the mysteries of existence and the wisdom of faith. Imagine this: every like, every comment, and every subscription is like a ripple in the ocean, reaching further and touching more lives. Just as the little girl's question in this story inspired a profound reflection, your engagement could inspire someone else to look up at the stars, to question, and to seek. And don't forget to share this video. Share it with friends, family, or anyone who might be walking through their own moments of uncertainty. Think of it as spreading light, a reflection of your own faith, hope, and commitment to the journey. Together, we can build a community that doesn't just consume content but truly connects, inspires, and uplifts. So, let us ask, will you take this step with us? Will you click that like button, hit subscribe, and be part of a journey bigger than yourself? Together, let's illuminate the path for others. One question, one conversation, and one heart at a time. Let's spread the light. Let's keep searching. Let's grow together.